Let's start with what Washington quietly dropped this week. The White House's first unified agenda under the new administration. It's the scorecard of what the federal government plans to regulate or unregulate over the next year and a half. If you make a living with a truck, this list decides your margins, your freedom to run your business, and whether you're treated like a contractor or a hired hand. The highlight? A lot of action just got pushed into late 2025 and well into 2026. Translation, delay, repropose, rethink. That's not an accident. It's a strategy. Take the long-running fight over broker transparency. 5 years of petitions, protests, and comments. FMCSA now says it'll publish a second notice of proposed rulemaking by the end of May 2026. In other words, hurry up and wait. The first proposal landed last November and said brokers would have a regulatory obligation to hand over transaction records when carriers ask. Brokers screamed burdensome. Small carriers said finally. And now we're told to expect a do-over in 2026. Why? Because every month this drags is another month of status quo. Delay is policy. Meanwhile, real people are out there arguing this on forums every day. Go read the broker subreddits. A chorus saying essentially, transparency won't help carriers and they're just looking for someone to blame. That's the attitude. Condescending and weirdly proud of it. On the other side, OIDA keeps pointing out what actually happens. Hidden fees, undocumented claims, chargebacks that take money out of drivers' pocket with no paperwork to match. That's not feelings. That's receipts or lack of them. Next, the push for automatic emergency braking on heavy trucks. Remember, this is a congressionally nudged mandate. FMCSA and NHTSA are preparing a second NPRM to standardize performance and maintenance requirements by the end of this year. If you love the tech, this sounds great. If you're actually driven with false positives, you know the downside. Phantom braking on a loaded rig at highway speeds is not theoretical. Even members of Congress have said on the record that AEB on heavy trucks is hurting more than it's helping in its current form. But the rulemaking train keeps rolling. Ask yourself why the people who don't drive the trucks are so eager to dictate how trucks drive. On safety ratings, brace for the most sweeping change in a decade. FMCSA wants to overhaul the safety fitness determination process and publish a new NPRM by May 2026. The stated goal, better identify unfit carriers and get them off the road. Sounds noble, and parts of it probably are. But remember what this power means in practice. If the government simplifies the rating game, one algorithm nudge can put a small fleet in conditional limbo forever, insurance up, freight down, business strangled. Centralized rating power isn't neutral. It picks winners and losers. We tried a version of this in 2016 and it detonated into controversy. Now it's back. Different label, same force. Then there's side underwrite guard idea still in the analyzing comments stage until January 2026. If you haul flatbeds or untied dock approaches into real world, you already know the problems: weight cost, compatibility, and maneuverability. Regulators know too. That's why they're taking their time. Because once you mandate hardware across the national trailer fleet, you're no longer studying. You're spending private balance sheets by government decree. For what the net benefit? What deserves an honest debate with real-world data, not just headlines? Now, for the truly big story nobody in legacy media seems excited to celebrate, speed limiters are dead withdrawn. After nearly 20 years of threat, FMCSA and HTSA formally yanked both the old 2016 joint NPRM and the 2022. We're coming back to this announcement. Done, gone, off the docket. That's not just a policy change, it's a victory for physics and common sense. Speed differentials between governed trucks and surrounding traffic create real hazards. People who've never merged a 53-foot across 3 lanes at 65 in 75 don't get that. You do. This withdrawal proves your voice mattered. It also proves one more thing. If drivers don't speak up, bad rules become permanent. Not everything is delay. FMCSA is actually peeling off some pretty paperwork barnacles, proposing to scrap the requirement to keep a printed ELD manual in the cab and tinkering with a handful of outdated parts and accessories rules, spare fuses here, labeling there. Will that make or break your quarter? No, but it signals a posture, less box checking, more practicality. And honestly, it's long overdue. There's also a broader pro-trucker package emerging in DOT messaging. Commitments like not extending ELDs to pre-2000 trucks and stepping up enforcement on unlawful brokering and double brokering. That's the right fight. The problem isn't drivers. It's the bad actors who skim, spoof, and disappear behind shell companies. If the government finally focuses on that instead of micromanaging cab interiors, truckers might actually see relief where it counts. And then we get to the Department of Labor. This is where the ground keeps moving under your feet. The Biden-era 2024 rule tried to tighten worker classifications so that more contractors become employees. Courts upheld parts of it, but the new DOL says it plans to rescind that rule and reconsider the whole thing. Business groups cheered. OIDA signaled conditional support, but warned against using safety pretexts to shoehorn other mandates into the contractor model. You know what that's called? Regulatory whiplash. If you lease on as an owner-operator, Washington's flip-flops aren't academic. They decide whether your business model is legal next year. Let's be blunt. The leased owner-operator model built a huge share of American trucking. It's flexible, it rewards hustle, and it lets a driver become a business owner without asking permission from a corporate HR department. Undermine that, and you don't just hurt carriers. You crush local entrepreneurship. You take the kid who saved for a down payment on a used Cascadia and shove that kid back into an employee bucket with a schedule, a manager, and no upside. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the people who loved centralized control can't stand the idea that hundreds of thousands of Americans work without them. So what should you watch on the calendar? Real dates, not vibes. Second, AEB NPRM by end of 2025. Broker transparency, second APRM by May 2026. Safety fitness overhaul also by May 2026. Side underwrite still in analysis into January 2026. Speed limiter rulemaking withdrawn July 24, 2025, and micro fixes to ELD and parts accessories are already moving through proposals. That's the map. Plan accordingly. Here's the bigger pattern. Washington loves to regulate the things it understands least: human judgment and risk at highway speed. It's easier to write a lab test for a sensor than to understand why a veteran driver lifts off the throttle 2 seconds before a blind crest. It's easier to measure paperwork than integrity. But the more they try to automate judgment out of trucking, the more they will be shocked when reality resists. You can't code away the weather. You can't NPRM a deer out of the left lane at 3 a.m. You're an owner-operator or you run a small fleet, the game is to be ruthlessly informed and annoyingly loud. Submit comments. Show up when they reopen dockets. Document every nonsense deduction a broker tries to take. Keep receipts. When they say we can't share the rate con, push back politely, professionally, relentlessly. When the regulator says we just need your input, believe them on the record, because the other side is always there with lawyers and time. Also, don't get distracted by shiny objects. AEB will keep moving. It may end up smarter than it is now. Fine. Use what helps and disable what hurts within the law. Safety ratings will change. Make your compliance boring and your maintenance immaculate. Broker transparency is coming. Slow. Prepare your workflow now. Standardized requests, templated follow-ups, a dead simple ledger trying every claim to a document. When the rule drops, you'll be weeks ahead. Most of all, remember what the speed limiter withdrawal proved. Drivers can win. That was not a gift from our committee. It was a forced rethink by facts, by physics, and by pressure from people who know how the road actually works. The second you stop pushing, the bureaucracy rolls back in. The second you show up, calm, informed, persistent, it suddenly discovers prudence. Funny how that works. If you want to coverage that treats truckers like adults, who understand costs, safety, and freedom, this is the place. Subscribe, share this, and drop your stories below. The bogus claims you've seen, the tech that saved you, the tech that almost killed you, the rule that needs to die, the one that actually helped. Washington reads comments too, especially when they're smart. Let's give them something to read. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.